Welcome to another Gobbet Opus. This one is number 30. It is from October 2008 and is called 1982. In 1982, I was a third-year medical student, and the first report of gay-related immunodeficiency, or GRID, not to be mistaken for GERD, was published in the MMWR. It did not, as I remember, make much of an impression at the time, a series of obscure diseases when I was still trying to learn the basics of medicine. 2 years later, I was taking care of my first 2 AIDS patients as a medicine resident in Minnesota. Those cases made an impression. A 25-year-old male who died of disseminated MAC, and a middle-aged dwarf who died of cryptococcal meningitis. Really, a dwarf. At that time, we had no idea what was causing AIDS. We only knew that it was linked to drugs, sex, and Haiti. Both my patients had had thousands of sexual partners, and both had used drugs, so they had the tentative diagnosis of GRID, now we call it AIDS. We all felt moderately comfortable that it was not spread casually, but I still remember declining a piece of chocolate from the young male with advanced HIV and disseminated MAC with the excuse that I wasn't hungry. I also remember him telling me that I could not get the disease from him unless we had sex or, quote, I spit in your mouth, unquote. That conversation has stuck all these years. That same year, 1984, what we then called HTLV-3 was discovered, since renamed HIV. Once the virus was discovered, the pathophysiology known, and the epidemiology understood, I have felt more comfortable with eating my patients' chocolate, only when they offer it to me, of course, but I still do not let anyone spit in my mouth. You have to draw the line somewhere. The AIDS epidemic has been a major part of my career. The early years were of death after awful death. The initial waves of optimism followed by pessimism as medications were developed, tried, succeeded, resistance developed, and then they fail. Now we have highly active antiretroviral therapy, HAART, and I have had 1 death this century from AIDS. We have gone from a 9-month life expectancy to an almost normal life expectancy for U.S. AIDS patients. Once at a conference, the speaker who was discussing a case and who did not know a lot about AIDS put HAART on the board, HAART. I suggested that it was actually fairly active antiretroviral therapy, and he obligingly changed the H to an F. Hilarity ensued. Some residents now will go through a 3-year training program and never see a complication of HIV. The progress has been astounding, at least to those who can afford the medications. I have seen far too many deaths from patients that cannot afford the medications and have come in dying and then died of AIDS. All these advances stem from the discovery of the virus by a Frenchman whose name I cannot pronounce, as well as Luc Montagnier, for which they received a very well-deserved Nobel this week. The depth and breadth of understanding that can be rapidly brought to bear on new pathogens is astounding, as HIV and SARS has demonstrated. What has always been depressing about HIV is the number of people who really never should have died. Science and epidemiology was and still is ignored in favor of politics and religion. Over 25 million people have died of AIDS so far, most of these deaths unpleasant and in the young. And simple preventatives could have done much to attenuate the epidemic. Condoms for our English listeners, and in the United States at least, closing the bathhouses. To this day, the 2007 statement by the Catholic Bishop Maputo Archbishop Francisco Chiamoyo of Mozambique that condoms that were deliberately infected with HIV to finish off Africans has still not been repudiated by the Church. How many extra will now die in that country where 500 people are newly infected each day? It still pisses me off that some people prefer lying to science to further their ends. The relevant article here was from the BBC News. bbc.co.uk/2/hi/Africa/7014-335. That ends a Gobbet Opus number 30. It's now a middle-aged podcast. See you next time.